I'm down here in Chicago on the south side by Prairie Shores. And I don't know why Serena Williams and her sister wouldn't be doing this movement within the black community, getting involved in tennis. Wouldn't it make sense that I guess the Arthur Ashe Foundation can further, prevent HIV, but also encourage tennis for black males? So again, they can encourage them getting involved in tennis and athletics and out of the gangbanging, making Chicago a better and safer place. And there's a lot of tennis courts, and I love playing tennis. I used to play tennis all the time with my ex, Jennifer Kim. Now, she played in high school, but one of the things that also stunk was that when she left, I didn't have anyone to play tennis with either. And I used to go hit the ball by myself, but again, she loved playing tennis. And so that's something we could do together. And then we went bowling together as well. Yeah, we used to go bowling together, play tennis together, and we compete against each other. Yeah, we play tennis against each other, and we play bowling against each other. And she was a good athlete. So she was trained in tennis. I was an amateur. She had much more training. And so she was better. I was worse. So it made it fair. And then she could bowl. And so we were very similar in bowling. So I could do all these things. And then I went jogging with her. And then she liked going to yoga with me. And then I could take her lifting. And then I could do stretching with her and many other things. So we did lots of activities with us as a couple that she has no pictures of in that scrapbook. And that it shows none of all the other stuff we did. But we also went skiing together, snowboarding together. So, I don't understand husbands and wives and that, and couples. There should be all kinds of things. We used to go dancing all the time together. Then we go for walks together. Truly. So all this stuff that we could do together. And so I don't understand couples in that. And yeah, she would have played chess with me. We never did, but I guarantee you she could play chess. And it would have been fun playing chess with her and doing other things as well. So think about your relationship with your significant other, your spouse, and that how it isn't developed, and how you can do all these other things with your spouse that you're never doing. And this is why we have so many screwed up relationships. Because, again, people don't do these things with their spouse. And yes, we went out to dinner together, and we traveled together, but also she liked to swim, and we go swimming together. So, again, we could do all these things together. And so it's great, but people don't understand. They don't do these. Like Lear doesn't take Ellen golfing. Never got Ellen involved in golfing. Never took Ellen bowling. My sister, her husband, never took his wife bowling, never took his wife golfing, never did anything. They started going to the gym. That was later. At least they started doing one thing together. But they didn't have this. Besides the kids, I'm talking outside of the kids. They like going to the games and watching the kids, but I'm talking stuff that they can do together. And they never developed that interconnectiveness. Truly, as long as they've been together, their relationship lacked. They could have got into cards and played pinochle and many other things together. But they never developed that set of activities and doing things together. That's what Stan and Lil. Now, you can go golfing like Lil did with the girls and Stan did with the guys, but they never golfed together. They didn't do couples golfing. You can play couples golf. You can play couples tennis. And here's the Cardinal Meyer Center of the Archdiocese of Chicago. And this is a beautiful bridge that goes out over Lakeshore Drive and towards the lake, and it's incredibly beautiful. But the thing that sucks about all this is that the neighborhood around here sucks. And that means the church's property isn't worth as much, and that makes their lending costs higher. But if the equity goes up because the community gets better, and this is what churches don't understand, they own unbelievable amount of real estate, and if they improve the communities, their real estate investments go way up, and their cost of lending goes way down, and the churches can accomplish way more. So the churches benefit directly as well. But down here, again, I point about moving the Bears Stadium down here. It might not be a bad idea moving it here. It's still a good idea in Arlington Heights, but it's also a good idea down here. And eventually they're going to have to make a choice. But if not, this is a great area where they can build out the University of Roosevelt campus, or maybe Robert Morris campus, or they go into the Michael Reese and Robert Morris and National Louis has its vertical, but Roosevelt or whatever, the three of them build out a campus here, a multi-educational campus, and they build it out on the Michael Reese property where Robert Morris, Roosevelt University, and National Louis College take that land and build out an incredible educational campus where they can put all kinds of research facilities and many others on the campus. So if they don't move the stadium, or the stadium goes to Arlington Heights, they don't lose. And that area wins anyways because the stadium goes down and they can enhance Museum Park and all those museums. I don't understand the educational institutions in Chicago, because they can use all those museums to teach all kinds of courses and integrate it in the science and industry, and go down there and have a course truly about stuff. Go down there and have your students go down there and bring up different topics in science and industry. And you can do that as a semester in a course, and they write on something, and they can go down there and they can see the display and talk to the people at science and industry. And so they don't incorporate the museums in the educational institutions of elementary and high school, and they can use them as well in college. And they don't incorporate the zoos. They do not incorporate the zoos. And you can teach all kinds of animal behavior, truly. And then you can go down there and teach animal behavior where they teach them sign language and many other things. And they can teach them all kinds of stuff about animals. They have cows at the zoos. Do you know the zoos can get into farming in that? And show how to milk a cow and everything. They have cows at the Lincoln Park Zoo. And we have the Brookfield Zoo. Then you have the Nature Museum. And they can get into the science of plants and so on. And then it can talk about plants and animals. And then we have birds and so on. And they don't use, our educational institutions don't use. When I was at Patrick Henry, at least we took a field trip for the day to the state capitol. And it was great to see Lincoln and go to the state capitol and see all the stuff up there. And then we took a trip down to Science and Industry, I think, and the Field Museum when I was at Patrick Henry. And I saw the coal mine, and then I got to go on the U-boat. Yes, they had a U-boat a submarine from World War II. I'm like, wow, the people had to be very short. And then I saw, the walkway. It was a metal grate walkway, and they had all the batteries under it, and the batteries didn't hold charges for long. But the whole point is they don't integrate this stuff that's here. And then all the art institutes, the elementary schools, they don't take their students there and I'll talk about what style of painting, what types of paint do they use the chemistry in the paint, the canvases they used to use, the types of brushes, the types of brush strokes they used to use, the wood they made for the frames for the painting, the style of cut on the wood, the etching on the wood to go with the painting. Why weren't they smiling? Mona Lisa doesn't smile. The reason back then they had bad teeth. So people didn't smile back then. George Washington, he had dentures, and those dentures were wooden. George Washington had wooden dentures, wooden teeth. They had dentures all the way back in the 1700s. They had dentures. George Washington had wooden dentures. Dentures have been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So, but they don't talk about that. There is so much. They can go to McDonald's and Hamburger University, and they can go through and talk about the history of McDonald's and how it started and evolution. They can, get into these corporations that are, Chicago corporations or corporations that have come to Chicago, or go down to the financial markets and take tours and talk about how market works and how financial literacy and so on. But there is so much. Come down to the convention center and take a tour of it with your elementary school. Not because there's a convention when it's not going on. They talk about how conventions work and why businesses and why conventions are important for trade and important for association development and so on. And they can educate them on all these things, but they don't. Educate them on what's proper manners at a hotel. What's proper manners at a nightclub. Go down. I took Jen. I had Jen to go with, because I couldn't go. I had Jen and my brother go down to ABT Electronics and take a tour. And then I took a tour. I set it up for Jimmy, my friend Jimmy Kang, and my partner David Kudo. And we took a tour of the facility just so they get an idea how a business runs. Not stealing any intellectual properties, but how a business runs, what they do, the HR compartment, their online services, getting an idea of the structure of businesses. And you're just giving them a high-level understanding. But they can go into these businesses, even a day in the life of a person at Papa John's. And I'm talking elementary school kids. And what is proper etiquette when you go to a restaurant? The schools need to teach etiquette. I told you my partner David, the first thing when he got out of college from Roosevelt and he started training at Arthur Anderson, the first thing they did is took him out to teach him dining etiquette. How to use the fork, how to use this, how to use that. What did I do with Jen? She wanted me to take Charles and Gina out to a high-end restaurant and teach them dining etiquette. Teach them where the water glass, where the Bennett and Brother plate is, what these are for, starting from the outside, working the way in. You use, at each course, they start either left or right with the utensils, depending on what it is, and you work from the outside inside. And telling them, okay, here's where the water glass is and the wine glass, and then going into dessert service and everything else, and teaching them how to have proper table manners. And so I took them out to a fine Italian restaurant, and I went over everything. And the waiter was very patient, and I tell them, I'm here to educate them on dining and dining etiquette. So they can come down and learn about a Papa John's or come down and see White Castle. And when it's not open, and they come in and they just explain what goes on and how they run inventories and so on, just giving them an idea. And, what do customers order, and, what is the etiquette, and what is tipping with a pizza driver, and how should you act in places like White Castle? Teaching them etiquette. And if you go into a Chinese restaurant, take them to Chinatown and take them in and say, hey, listen, we're going to go in and we're going to go into this Chinese restaurant, and we've already talked to them, and we're going to sit down and eat, and they're going to teach us proper manners at a Chinese restaurant, how to use chopsticks. These are life courses. This is home economics. And they take them out and they teach them home economics, how to use chopsticks, how to do this etiquette, how to interact with foreigners, what's appropriate etiquette. But they don't do these life courses. And education is not only in the book, but it's outside the classroom as well. And they need to teach them that. Even as an elementary school, bring the police officer in. Now you're talking about drug awareness and everything, but also talk about sexual harassment, talk about inappropriate touch, and then talk them how they should interact with a police officer, how they should call 911 and interact with 911. They keep on telling me they need to transfer me. No, take my information first. And then the transfer, they shouldn't have to put me on hold. They should have a button where it transfers automatically behind scenes so they can stay on the line with me taking my information. But they need to teach them this. And this is